Hello and welcome to the JCN Clinic podcast show. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Rochelle.
That is right. We've got Roshelle Colegrove with us today from JCN instead of Carissa. We've had Roshelle on the podcast once or twice, Ro?
Once.
Once, yeah.
Mm.
A little while ago. And today's a special session because Rochelle's going to share with us her own personal health story. I'm trying to avoid the word journey, trying to avoid that hideous word, but it's going to come up. You can't help it. But we're going to talk about Rochelle's own, particularly gut health journey, which is very pertinent to what we do at the JCN Clinic and very, very pertinent to how Ro loves to apply what she does in clinic and her passion area. Her and I would say, very similar in what we love to treat as far as clients. And usually that love comes from your own, in a lot of cases, your own experience. And there's nothing that I think is more kind of helpful for people who are out there listening to have that real life connection to someone that works in this space and to, I feel like, sometimes I think that you can put practitioners on a little bit of a pedestal too. And I think that can be really nice for people to like understand you as a person and what makes you such an amazing practitioner because of your experience. So I'm very excited to hear your story because I only know bits and pieces. So I'm like on the edge of my seat for this as well.
Yeah,
A
it's
little
so
bit.
true. I feel like I am the practitioner I am today, and I treat the way that I treat, and because of my own personal experience. And unless you've had that personal experience, you can read any textbook, you can do whatever you like. But to actually personally go through it, like it just gives you so much of a better understanding of what our clients are going through from day to day, especially in the gut health space, because
Mm.
and we probably see it like so much at the JCN clinic, but clients will come to us after being sent from one person to the next in terms of doctors and other practitioners and gastroenterologists and all of those things, and they come to us as a last resort sometimes, go, I just really need someone to listen. And that was certainly my probably first 15 years of my journey was, and there's the word journey. Sorry,
I told you it's gotta be used. Look, this is an
journey.
appropriate
Um,
space for journey. Let's just like be okay with it.
um, because I think my gut issue started when I was like a kid. So a really
Hmm.
anxious child, and I just noticed that my stomach would not feel good. I'd get those butterflies, like even from a young age. And definitely that anxious brain when I was like, even from like primary school years up until high school. And then when high school hit, obviously that additional stress and pressure of school and, making sure that you're ticking all the boxes in terms of, like socializing and all of those things, it just got way too much for me. And that's when I started to get like quite significant gut symptoms. And I remember, and it's so interesting what you remember, like as part of that. I don't
Hmm.
remember anything from my high school years, but I do remember like just some days not being able to leave the house because I was either in significant pain, so like
Hmm.
significant gut pain where I just couldn't even move, or I would like have to be so close to a bathroom that I literally just could not leave the house. And I remember thinking back then, when I'm stressed or when school's like full on or when I'm not sleeping
Hmm.
well, my symptoms are worse. Like I remember thinking like that little thought when I was younger. Um, but then in my probably early teens, when things were getting like really significant to the point where I wasn't able to work a lot of the time, just because my gut symptoms were so terrible, and I'd be in and out of hospital as well. So I remember probably once a month I'd have to call an ambulance and get rushed to the hospital with such
Shit.
significant pain. And they would dose me up on morphine to get rid of it. And they would run all of the tests and all of the scans, and they would just say there's nothing going on. but there's nothing there. So and then I remember one doctor saying to me, look, it's in your head. Like, this is not
Oh,
anything
wow.
that we can find. It's in your head. Like, it has to be because there's nothing there. And then they slap on the IVF
Mm-hmm.
umbrella. It's like, we don't
Mm-hmm.
understand or know what this is. So now you're classified as IBS.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that's the diagnosis, and you just have to live with that. I suppose it's like there's not really anything they can do. We know your symptoms are occurring because you're ending in yourself in hospital every month or so, but really there's like just nothing we can do for you. So just send you away and just hope for the best. But at this stage, my diet was so restricted that I was just losing weight. So I remember grade 8, I was a size 14. By grade 12, I was a size 4 to 6. That's
Whoa.
how restricted my diet was. Yeah, it was so
Whoa.
restricted. I could hardly
Was
eat
that
anything.
self-restriction because you had like just found you were reacting to
To
so much and you were
everything.
cutting and cutting and cutting back trying to work it out on
Yeah,
your own, like you weren't getting obviously any guidance at this point
for sure.
from a dietary
Yeah.
point of view?
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
And so,
Yeah.
and it was, the weight loss was significant. And, add
Mm-hmm.
stress and add, high school into the
Mm-hmm.
mix. And I'm sure there are a lot of other things, that culminated into that. But a lot of it was just that fear. And how often do we see this? Just that fear surrounding eating
Mm-hmm.
food, because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to have to race to the bathroom at school. I didn't want to have to, have really bad stomach cramps and, all the other associated not very nice
Mm.
symptoms that you don't want to have when you're sitting in a classroom.
Yeah.
And so it would just restriction and restriction. And I actually
Yeah.
remember, this is the other thing I remember, like the gastroenterologist saying to me once, he's like, it's the food you're eating. Like it's the food you're eating. So we influence the food and we influence the gut symptoms. And I was like, but it's not, because every
Mm.
day I will eat the same thing and I get different symptoms. So explain that to me.
Mm.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that doesn't make any
Mm-hmm.
sense. But it's just, but the only tool for us, and this was like, I'm not going to disclose my age, but this was 10 years ago. Let's just put it that way. 10 years ago. Um, and we certainly didn't have functional testing and things like that like we have
Mm-mm.
now. It was only really, the only tool in my tool belt was, colonoscopy and endoscopy, like just to rule out the sinister
Mm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've also got bowel cancer in my family, so I have to be. My grandmother had bowel cancer, so I have to be quite careful. And her diagnosis was early 20s as well. So yeah,
Oh,
there's
wow.
definitely, that's always in the back of my mind in terms of just making sure that I'm ticking the colonoscopy box just to make sure
Yeah.
there's nothing sinister happening. But then also, ruling out inflammatory bowel disease and
Yeah.
all of those as well. Um, but yeah,
So
the
did you have
only
those
tool,
tests?
yeah, all done and
Yeah.
nothing came back. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and so yeah, the only tool in our tool belt was restrict the food, and
Mm.
hopefully that will make a difference. And so I
Did they
went.
ever do a sorry, Ro, did they ever do a
No, go.
stool test at any point? I know the stool test obviously is very rudimentary. The only reason I ask is when I was in my
Mm,
I was probably more like in my early 20s, just turned 20, and going through heaps of gut stuff. I did see a doctor who did actually get me to do a stool test, which was a crap stool test and didn't show anything. But yeah, I was just curious whether, like at that point for yourself too, did anyone ever think even back then to go, oh, maybe we should do a stool test to see if she's
no,
got some sort
never.
of like parasite or pathogen
Mm.
bacteria?
No, no,
No.
never. And interestingly, the colonoscopy, even with my family history, wasn't pulled until I was much older as well. Like, it was wild.
Mm.
Like, looking back at it now, I think, wow, I should have had that colonoscopy years and years before that. Years and years before
Mm.
that. Like, bloods,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Ultrasounds, yes. Like just the standard that they do in the hospital when you go into hospital. But yeah, even the colonoscopy wasn't done until I was probably mid 20s, and I had been
Wow.
a good 10 years, and then all of that weight loss and then significant anxiety as well. Because I honestly,
Mm-hmm.
in my probably mid-20s, I was really struggling to leave the house because I was just so anxious about my gut symptoms because they were so different every day that I just like leaving the house was an issue. And I remember like when
God.
I'd go out, making sure I knew where the McDonald's were so I could use the bathroom, or making sure I knew where the
Yep.
shopping center was. So I, like just knowing
Yep.
where all of those things were so I could actually leave the house. Like, and that went on
Mm-hmm.
for years, so many years. Um, and then, as you mentioned, you know, we all get into this space because of our challenges. So I actually studied nutrition first up to fix myself. Like honestly, like I just needed to understand
Mm.
why this was occurring and why it was happening, and I needed to get to the root cause of it. And I remember seeing when I first started studying nutrition, I was like, this is amazing. Like I'm going to get the answers that I'm looking for. I didn't straight away. It's taken me quite a few years in my career to get there. And you know, and it's also a process as well. And I think that's the biggest
Yeah.
thing. And I know I talk about this a lot with clients. It's like I I will always be working on my gut health. Like I will
Yeah.
never not be working on my gut health. It's like, so I still do have symptoms from day to day, but they're certainly not as bad as they used to be.
Mm.
And I can now piece together why those symptoms are occurring, whereas previously
Mm.
there was no rhyme or
Yes.
reason. But it's that constant curiosity and that constant like thinking, okay, how can I do better? How can I do better from my
Mm.
gut perspective? That actually like I think it's you just continue to learn, don't you? And I suppose with the functional testing available now, we're continuing to learn as well, which is so cool. That I think back to when I could only pull an intolerance test. I think we were talking about
Yes.
this not long
Yes.
ago. The blood draw and the intolerance test. But when you've got a reactive person in front of you, everything just comes up. Which would certainly was the case when I think I went to a naturopath. That was like the first part of my, journey when I was younger. It's like, I think I went
Yeah.
to a dietitian first, got put on the FODMAP diet. That was now I know better, but back then I didn't. It was like a 4 or 5 month process on the FODMAP diet,
Mm.
and then my symptoms got
Mm-hmm.
worse, and then I was reacting to everything, and so I was like,
Oh.
okay, well that didn't work. That's the worst.
Yeah.
Didn't work at
Yeah.
all. And then coming from that really restrictive diet at the very start, that just adds that other layer of restriction, doesn't it? And it's just
It
does your head
does.
in because like you're like counting the berries, like
Yeah,
counting the
that's it.
almonds,
Yeah.
and
And
it's
you're also in
when
such
you
a sorry, there's a bit of a delay,
mm,
I think. There's yeah, you're also in that super restricted space
mm,
where your actual physical food intake and therefore your like calorie needs and your macro and your micronutrient
for sure,
demands are not actually being met as well. So then
hmm
like and we see this with clients, like then you start to significantly suffer more because you're not getting the building blocks you need even to have sufficient gut health, let alone like neurotransmitter function, like as far as like
for
your
sure,
brain health and like, yeah, it's just that
mm,
kind of vicious cycle. But at the end of the day, you're so scared, like you're so backed into a corner that all you can think about is, well, I feel like I've got some sort of safety in this very
mm,
restricted food area. And it's almost like nothing else. Yeah, nothing else. It's not like nothing else matters, but like that's the most
mm,
important thing, like to have some sense of control. But
yeah.
yeah, like it again, as we see it a lot, don't we, with clients?
Yeah. And I remember it was a really slippery slope for me, that FODMAP diet.
Mm,
Like because I had been able to maybe there were a few high FODMAP foods that I was eating regularly, like on the daily because I knew that I could tolerate them. So then like
mm,
removing them completely, it left me with nothing. Like literally nothing. And I was thinking, this this whole process is just a real slippery slope. And obviously now
mhm,
I understand it in a bit more detail, like in terms of the FODMAP diet and how it can be beneficial, but also how it can be detrimental too from, your beneficial bacteria perspective, because we're reducing the diversity of it. So I understand for some clients it can be incredibly beneficial, but also when you've got that layer of restriction there, it can just honestly just make it so much more challenging. So that I think, like, from a practitioner perspective, that was sort of the first person I saw was a dietitian, and that really didn't serve me very well just because of just my history. And then so after that, I went to a naturopath, and that's when I got the intolerance testing done. So,
right.
and this is probably why this is not probably, it's absolutely why I am so passionate about chronic gut clients and understanding this sensitivity and reactivity because of these experiences with other practitioners. So I remember the first naturopath I went to, and I'm a naturopath, just telling everyone, so I'm not throwing shade at naturopathy at all. I absolutely love it, naturopathy, but just giving you just some relevance around what, sort of my own personal experience. I remember doing the intolerance testing, but it was when I was super reactive. So I was highly stressed, highly anxious. Like, there was a lot of stuff going on for myself personally. And then also, like, the gut symptoms were the whole reason I went to a naturopath was because my gut symptoms were really quite poor at the time. And I remember doing that intolerance testing, and eggs, chicken, like all of the foods that I was eating like every day came up as high reactivity. And I remember the naturopath saying to me, well, we need to remove them. Like, you need to get them out of your diet. And I'm like, listen, I can't remove any more food from my diet. But I was just like, it's because I was so reactive. My gut was so reactive, and I hadn't done any work to try to calm its farm by really any stretch of the imagination, because I didn't know where to start at that point. That everything came up. And I was iron deficient at the time as well. Like, I remember there was like quite a big web of things that we see like very frequently with clients that have chronic gut symptoms, like, as you were just alluding to with the nutrient deficiency. So there was a lot going on. And so I remember that being sort of the first port of call. And then I remember, being given a couple of different supplements, and honestly, they made me so sick, so sick. And I think I $300 worth of supplements that I couldn't take. Like, I remember starting with the actual dose, like not no, I just start. She'll be right. And she was not right. It was all hell, all broke loose. And yeah, I like even like straight glutamine I couldn't do. Just like basic building blocks. Like basic things that you need, I just could not do. And like just random stuff like magnesium. To this day, like, I still can't tolerate magnesium very well, but even just small nutrients, I just could not tolerate. So probiotics, prebiotics, none of that. I couldn't tolerate any of it. And so, and we see this so often, and that's why, like, whenever I have a treatment plan for a client that has been going through this similar experience, we start really low and slow, because I've had that personal experience. So I'm like, let's just start with a quarter, and then we'll see how we're feeling, and then build from there. Because that is, low and slow, because like that's the experience that I've had. And generally speaking now, and things are quite different from a supplement perspective. I mean, back then it was probably, the forms weren't as good, the ingredients probably weren't as good as well, and then the gut powders were very different to the gut powders we have now.
Yeah, for sure.
I definitely tolerate supplements much better now, but I don't know whether that's the products themselves, or whether that's just because I've done a little bit of work on
probably a mix.
Bit of work on my gut health.
Yeah,
bit of everything. just a little. So really low and slow, just, and it was a frustrating process. Like, I remember just being so frustrated, kept on dropping money, wasn't getting anywhere, and there has to be a better way. Like, there has to be a better way. And so I sort of just stopped for a while. I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to see anyone. I'm just going to accept my fate. Pretty much, like, accept my fate.
Were you still studying at this point? Were you still studying at this point? You were?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. And so I think like understanding little pockets of information, and definitely probably the biggest thing for me was learning, like in my first degree, learning about that gut brain connection and how I wasn't actually sick, and how what I had actually thought back when I was a kid was actually absolutely what was happening. And I suppose the research, we're understanding it in a lot more detail now, and whereas previously we probably didn't have that understanding, as good an understanding anyway. So that was empowering for me to actually have that knowledge, to then go, oh, okay, well. And what really changed the game for me was definitely that nervous system, like really helping to support my nervous system. Like that was definitely a piece of the puzzle that was absolutely missing from all of the practitioners I had seen up until that point. But to be honest, like, let's be real. Let's be real, Jess. I am still learning how to support my nervous system. You know, it's a work in progress.
It is a work in progress.
Yeah, and it's for everyone, you know, like absolutely.
It is.
Yeah. Like it's not something that you're just nailing 24/7. But yeah, I think I definitely now understand how impactful it is. So then I can definitely put like practices in place to help to support it. And I think, you know, and that's important to have that one understanding, but also like being able to tune into your body that better as well. Because when you're constantly in pain, or when your symptoms are really acute, but you've been experiencing them for quite a long time, you sort of like you want to give up after a while. You're just like, nothing's working, and I'm just so over this. And every day is different too, and that's the other thing. It's like you do the same thing, you get a different result, and it's just like and then you know, you feel like you're taking 2 steps forward, and you're like, wow, things are really turning a corner, and then you take 10 steps back. And I say this to clients a lot. I'm like, I get it. Like, we are kicking goals right now. I see you kicking goals, and I'm so proud. And then the next minute I get an email, and I'm like, this is part of the process.
Exactly.
And I know it's frustrating. I I have been there so many times. I get it. But it is part of the process. So yeah, I think like the biggest thing for me is being real with clients about the journey, because it isn't like this linear, we just keep on improving and improving and happy days, and then we just like, you know, it's actually like,
it's so rare that happens. Like it's
like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the ups and downs, that linear trajectory. Once in a blue moon you get a client that does that, and it's just like, is this for real? Like, this just feels way too easy. So were you so had you given up, like you were still studying, but then the irony was, and I can relate to this, kind of interesting, like you were actually seeking help even from a naturopathic or a more holistic perspective, like you'd kind of sort of go down that route, but you were kind of not finding any success there, but then you're still studying it. So like there's obviously still like a drive and understanding within you, like that something is going on here in relation to nutrition, and something's going on here in relation to a deeper level of, which I love you said that even as a kid, like it's like you understood innately this gut brain connection, and you were seeing that. So it obviously kept you going. Like I had it's interesting, a similar scenario. And people would ask me about, who did you did you see these amazing practitioners that were part of like your inspiration? I was like, well, actually, no, all the practitioners that I saw were actually really shit, to be honest, to be blunt. Like but I knew in my gut, like, pardon the pun, like I knew that I was still on the right track. And it sounds like you did that. So did you go through, because you were just saying how you kind of also got to a point where you threw in, not sort of, I guess in a way you kind of threw in the towel for a while. Like
I did.
Did you
for sure
finish the degree, and then like where was that next step, like that next turning point for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think the next turning point for me, so I was I was pretty much just ticking along by myself, just doing what I could do. Supplements were completely out of the question. I couldn't do any of that. Even after I graduated, I was still like, I couldn't do much of that. And so I was just controlling with nervous system practices. So like doing yoga, like trying to make sure that I was looking after my body. Like I've been gluten and dairy free for as long as I can pretty much remember. And I know that that really helps to support my symptoms. So I've just, kind of just pieced together what works for me at any given time and just kept on doing that until the next turning point would have been being introduced to the JCN Clinic, I think, would be the next point.
So what was the time frame then, interestingly, there? Like, how long are you talking about?
Quite a long time. So I think it would have been probably a good 10 years, I think, that I was just ticking along on my own, pretty much. Just ticking along on my own.
Wow.
I did in that like sort of time frame see another naturopath, but that I ended up in hospital with that prescription. So after that, gave up because I was like, all right, that's it, I'm done. And look, I actually knew that I would find someone eventually that it would work. You know what I mean? Like, you just think, now's not the time. I'm just going to do what I need to do in this point in time to get through because, like just based on my symptoms, I was like, some days going to be better than others. So I definitely set up my work and I set up my life based on some days going to be better than others. So the way that I structured my work was not 9 to 5 because I just knew I couldn't do that. And so, it wasn't until like I met you, Jess, and I'd been fangirling you for a while. I remember walking into the JCN Clinic and like really flipping out. It was wild how we're now sitting here doing a podcast together. Wow, so cool. And then, I started seeing Carissa as a client, and I think that was the turning point for me. Like, I remember talking to Carissa, and I remember we were talking about my symptoms and my history. So we went through my history, which, interestingly, other practitioners didn't do very well. And I think that's where the poor prescriptions came from. Because now knowing what I know and seeing the clients that I see, the medical history is a big component, and I really hone in on the medical history, especially the gut history. Like, I need to know that stuff. It's really important to understand what's happened previously, and then also what they've done as well previously too, because that really shapes like what my next step is going to be. But with my history and with my sensitivity and with everything that had happened, like, you would think that you can't just throw everything in the kitchen sink at me because I am so sensitive. And I remember Carissa giving me like a sample of a couple of things to try, and I did react to them. Like, I couldn't. I think one was PHGG. Now I've just like
PhD. I have a love affair with.
And I couldn't tolerate it, and I remember like her saying, oh wow, your diet is restricted. Wow, right, well, this is where we're going to start. And I remember her, sending me through, I think it was a parsnip mash, and me going, I'm not doing that anymore. She's like, anyway, parsnip mash, to everyone listening, is actually excellent. It's fine, but at the time I was thinking, what is this madness? What is this madness?
What is this crazy girl telling me to do?
Like, what? I still have that prescription to this day. And sometimes I go back to it to actually give myself an understanding of how far I've come. Like, it actually is really humbling to look at that. It is amazing to look at that and go, wow, like, that really was the start. But it was the start of something so incredibly amazing. And I remember at the time, like, Carissa talking about the functional testing, which I hadn't done. Like, I had not gone to a practitioner that had spoken to me about testing. The only thing I had done was that intolerance testing. And, you know, at the time, I mean, this was not that long ago, you know, the testing was getting pretty awesome. Like, it's pretty
Yeah.
epic what we can order now. So I remember, and I remember it was like $700, like it's quite expensive. And at the time I was like, this is a lot of money. But like I remember Carissa saying to me, like, this will really give us the answers that we need to really start to look at your diet in more detail, to start increasing some of those fiber sources that is going to be so important for your beneficial bacteria, to start to reduce that sensitivity and reactivity. We need answers. And I was like, full trust, go for it,
Yeah.
and we did it. And I still have those test results as well, because I do like to look back at them sometimes because I'm a nerd. And I will do a comparison when I order my new testing soon, just to like see, you know, it's awesome to be able to check it over time. But I remember receiving those results, and look, to be honest with you, didn't understand half of it, so was pretty happy at the time for Carissa to talk me through it. Now I'm so well versed in functional testing that, you know, it's definitely a part of everything I do with clients, especially from that chronic gut perspective. But it it honestly changed the way that Carissa prescribed. It changed the way that we, you know, were able to increase more foods. And my gut symptoms have just gone from bad to better, 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 better. And now they've been the best they've ever been based on that first gut test. And I've ordered probably 5 or 6 since then. As we do. We do all the functional tests, and when a new functional test comes out, we do that, and it's all very cool. And, you know, you can see now, obviously, now that, you know, I'm able to eat more foods and I'm not as sensitive and I'm not as reactive. So I still need to this day, be very, very, like, I have to be really cautious with supplements still. I still react to supplements. So I have to really start low and slow, but there's definitely ones that like I will use that I know that my gut responds really well to. But yeah, it's just that whole process of functional testing completely changed the way that I supported my gut, and then completely changed the way that I moved my body, like, and the food I ate and the mindfulness practices that I did, like all of it. Like it changed everything. And it took time. Like, man, it took time. It's still a work in process, let's be real. But yeah, it took time. And I remember like we were adding fiber sources and then I had to take them out. And then I was like pretty much on speed dial. Malliness. Just like that didn't work. And you know, but that was all part of the process
Yeah,
and I'm so thankful that I did that testing, because honestly, out of everything in my whole experience, that one test really gave me the permission, or gave me the knowledge, and gave me the power to actually make the changes that I needed to based on my own individual gut and what it required. And so based on that experience,
I love hearing you say that it gave you that power, and I think you said permission, like it's just you talking about that turning point, like there's when you go from a place, as you're talking about when you were younger, where you're so lost and you've kind of scaled your life around, really it's like a deep fear of this thing that has control of you, and then it's like there's a fundamental shift where now you feel empowered, like you have knowledge. You're like now so many years and decades of not knowing what's going on. And then now all of a sudden it's like, here's some answers. This is actually what's going on. And here's someone to hold your hand and guide you through that. And for you to also learn as you go, what works for you. Like it's like, again, I know I'm like preaching to converted with you. Like that's what you get so much joy out of seeing in clients, because you know that feeling, you know that like flip to being like just in such a better place. And it's not only physical, it's how you feel then mentally and emotionally, being more just more like in the driver's seat.
Yeah, for sure. Because for so many years, there was just no control, absolutely none.
Yeah.
And just restriction and just fear and worry every time I'd leave the house. And yeah, just to be able to have answers is like so empowering. But then also, like, it's okay to, like, there's one thing to order a test, and get those results. But then what do you do
Mm,
with that? You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like if I had ordered
Yeah.
that as a nutritionist, if I had ordered that, because at the time I didn't have a lot of experience with functional testing. Um, so if I had ordered it and I'd gotten those results, I don't know if I know what to do with it to begin with.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And we see that
having,
as well with
oh,
clients, don't
for
we?
sure.
Sometimes that will come along that have had a test order, whether they've ordered it themselves or it's been
Yeah.
under different guidance. And
Mm,
unfortunately, and this isn't a bagging session, we're just being so honest,
no.
but because it is true,
Mm,
we do see this a lot where they've had incorrect guidance around test results. So they have actually spent a lot of money on functional testing, but they haven't been given the correct guidance, or they haven't been given any
mm,
guidance. They might have walked out with like a couple of dot points of a few things to change in their diet. Like it's
mm,
the degree of understanding that you need to have to work with those test results. And as you said too, the practitioner to support you and understand, no matter how important those test results are, how much they need to be put in association with your case history. And like
mm,
Carissa, like going through all of that detail with you and really understanding you as a person, and then being able to apply that in the context to those test results.
mm,
It's
mm.
just there's nothing more powerful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like that phase approach as well. Like you can't just, and this was probably the biggest thing, and what I take have taken away from Carissa and from JCN, and then obviously shaped with my own clients now, is that it needs to be a phased approach. Like you
Mm.
cannot just go in guns blazing and go, all
Mhm.
right, let's fix everything. It's like you can't, like you literally can't. I have
Mm.
had that done to me and I've been in an absolute mischief because of it. So it's like you actually need to meet the client where they're at. And so for myself, it was like,
Mm.
meet me where I was at. I had a restricted diet, like there wasn't too much I could do. We needed to add fiber sources in really slowly, but we also needed to do that foundational gut work as well before we could start throwing other elements into the mix too. And I think having that phased approach is just so
Mm.
important. It's so important,
Mhm.
especially when there's so much reactivity and so much sensitivity. It's like we have to calm things down
Mm.
first, however
Yep.
that looks for the person sitting in front of us. And then once we've done that, then we can start influencing what we need to influence. But you can't do that straight
Mm.
away. Like you just can't.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think of all of the things that I'm like, as part of this whole journey, the biggest thing is like just meeting me where I was at would have been so helpful at the very beginning,
Mm.
like, but it took many years to get there. But it honestly has made me like, well, it's given me a much better understanding of my own body, but then also given me this area that I specialize in now because I have
Mm.
experienced it myself. So that's my passion and my love for this, and my complete understanding of clients is from that experience, my own personal experience. And that is like, it's so powerful to actually walk with a client and understand what they're going through. I think,
Mhm.
I'm actually so thankful that I had this experience because, because of it, I'm now studying and working in a field that I completely love with the best team
Mhm.
ever. Let's be real. Um, but it does take a lot of time to, the functional testing side of things is like complicated. It's a lot to learn, and it takes a lot of education and knowledge to actually be able to
Mhm.
interpret those results. And so that's why I think, the more functional testing, like I see, the more I'm learning. Like it's forever
Yeah.
evolving too. It's such a cool industry to be in
Yeah.
because we're learning so much more than we knew 10 years ago, than we knew 5 years ago. Let's be honest. Like honestly, it's really changed the way that
Mm-hmm.
we do things now. And that is just so like, it's so powerful and so awesome.
Yeah.
That, yeah, everything that I've done up until this point shapes everything that I do with my clients now. So yeah.
I was actually going to ask you that just as a sort of, I guess, yeah, overall summary now that you're
Mm,
practicing and you've been practicing for quite some time. Like it's not new
mm,
experience to you, but how it has, yeah,
mm,
how all of this has shaped you and created you as a practitioner that you are, which I think
mm.
you've kind of just answered. But do you also find that because this is such a passion to you that you naturally attract those type of clients? Like I see that a lot with the different practitioners at JCN, but yeah, do you feel that you've become kind of like a magnet for these sort of more chronic cases?
Yeah, for sure. And to be honest, most of my clients are, chronic gut clients. So,
Hmm.
and I think, yeah, just sharing my experience, which I have done on my own social media platform over the years, like it really does give clients an understanding of like, oh, okay, like this isn't normal. There are ways that, you can be supported in this process as well. And so, yeah, it's actually, it's a really interesting dynamic when I have a client that I
Mm,
literally see myself. Like,
mm,
like,
hmm.
like there's are some clients that I'm literally, they're experiencing what I experienced in my early 20s. And I'm just like, wow,
Hmm.
it's so interesting to have that experience because I'm like, okay, what do I wish that I knew in my early 20s that
Yeah.
probably wasn't given to me until later? you know, what are those things? All right, let's go there. Um, because yeah, I remember being that age and not having the help that I needed at that time.
Mm,
So, and yeah, I think, the biggest, I do talk about this a lot with clients. It's like, it's not just your food. Like, it's the biggest thing that I see. Like, everyone's trying to influence their food, restricting this or adding this, but it's not just about the food that you're consuming. Like there's so
mm,
much more at play. There's so much more at play. And, I talk about the nervous system and talk about that gut brain connection. And it is so powerful. Like it was definitely
hmm.
the one thing that I had to shift and make a really conscious effort to shift. So I will always talk about that with clients, so that they understand that we can't do one without the other because we just can't.
Hmm.
can't.
Hmm.
You just can't.
No.
And so, yeah, like, and just having that conversation up front as well, I think is just really important too. It's like, and meet people where they're at as well. I mean, we don't go into a Thailand yoga meditation retreat for 3 weeks and, like, we don't have to go that serious. I did do that though once and it really helped. So just go to Thailand and do a yoga retreat, everyone. It really did help though.
I bet it did.
But yeah, it really helped. It really helped. Although I preface that it helped the nervous system. It didn't help the gut though. Let's put it that way. The gut
Mm,
was
hmm.
not well during that Thailand trip. But I expected as much. But yeah, it's just even small shifts and small changes can make such a big impact, and it doesn't have to be grand. And this is the other thing. We don't have to change everything. It doesn't have to be grand. It could just be as simple as just waking up at the same time each morning, or getting sunlight into your eyes in the morning. Like it can just be, or having a nighttime routine. I'm always banging on about nighttime routines. It can be really
Yeah.
simple things. It doesn't have to be like a whole shift and, changing every aspect of life. But just something that is powerful that influences that gut brain connection is, just really important. So I think,
Hmm.
bringing the information that I wish I knew in my early 20s to the initial consult is one thing I do. And I always joke with my clients about this because when I start talking about this stuff, I get really like animated and I start like talking really fast, and I
So
just say to
true.
clients like, you need to tell me to slow down. Like if I am going like 100 miles an hour and you're just sitting there like, what is this woman talking about? Like, what is she even talking about? Just stop me. Just go, hey, just
Has anyone
slow
ever
it
done
down.
that? Has anyone had to stop you?
I actually have to say to clients sometimes, I'm just really passionate about this topic, so I'm probably gonna go a little, full on. So
Oh,
if
it's
you
so
need, just tell me
funny.
to stop, and then we'll just, But anyway, I always put it into my treatment plan, so you can read it later, but during, it's flat. But that's when you're doing the right work,
That's
is
it.
when
That's
you're that
it.
passionate about things. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting, Ro, just hearing, I had no idea that this started at such a young age for you.
Mm,
And I also,
mm,
I mean, yeah, we were talking before we started, and I think I said it just at the start there. I knew bits and pieces, but I didn't know how
mm,
early this started. And I actually also didn't know how long you had that time period of just like, well,
mm,
this kind of, it is what it is. I'll just kind of like, it's almost like an acceptance of like, this is my life. I'll just learn to navigate this as
mm,
it is.
for
Like I
sure.
didn't realize that was such a big time period there. But
Mm,
yeah, it's such a relatable story for, I'm sure, lots of
mm,
people listening. And yeah, just obviously it's a massive component of the clients that we have at the JCN Clinic. So like you couldn't amalgamate two perfect things together, like just for you to be able to bring your own experience and bring that into being the amazing practitioner that you are, and for clients to be attracted to the JCN Clinic because of chronic gut issues. It's just like
mm.
this coming together of two perfect things. And I think the other aspect that I love is, yeah, you're just acknowledgement of the fact that this is a constant work in process. So it's not like I'm healed, I've healed myself. Like it's like, well, I'm in a really completely different place, but this is an ongoing process and I have to be aware of how I take care of myself, which is again what you're telling clients and communicating with clients,
Mm,
like we all are, that this, you don't just, I think people often think, oh, well, when do I get to the finish line and everything's
mm,
perfect and then I can eat whatever I want again and drink whatever I want again and do whatever I want again. It's like there's an accountability component of continuing to be well, and that line that changes and moves depending on
mm,
what you've got going on in your life. And it sounds like you've got like such a high awareness of that and an understanding of when stuff does start to happen, you can
mm.
understand, you can step back and go, well, I kind of know why this is happening. So I
Yeah.
need to, I need to maybe think about these factors and what I can do to change. It's
Mm.
just, yeah, it's just magic to be able to bring that to the table as a practitioner.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, previously, and I know I've shared this on my socials and we've spoken about it too, like reducing my alcohol and, like removing alcohol
Mm,
has been a really big game changer for me, like huge. And so, yeah, that was one thing that I have done quite recently that I've definitely noticed a massive impact on, my mood and then also my gut health
mm,
and just everything just is working, my mental clarity, my sleep is better, and all of those things are so
yeah.
intrinsically linked to your gut that it's just like, yeah, it's been huge for me. And so, yeah, I think like recently that's probably the biggest thing that I've done, to sort of
Hmm.
support my gut health and then also my mental health as well. So that's been a really, really huge one for me. And I've never
Hmm.
done that before, ever,
Oh,
like removed
really?
it completely. Not
Wow.
completely. Like I've gone
Yeah.
through phases in life where I haven't really drunk, but I
Yeah.
like my
Like,
Pinot,
yeah.
so I
Yeah.
do go to Melbourne now, so when in Melbourne. Um, but yeah, I think I actually when I came home from Melbourne really had to do some self reflection and say, listen, like
Mm,
a little bit of tough talk. What do you
yeah.
need right now? And that's just,
Yeah.
yeah, what I needed at that point in time. So
That's
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Mm,
So if there was,
mm,
just to finish, if there was one thing I know this is a hard question, but if there was one thing you could say to people listening who haven't started any form of support, but they resonate with what you're saying, if there was one thing you could say to them, what would it be?
Oh, yes, one thing. Oh,
As someone that likes to talk a lot, how can you summarize
yeah,
that to
yeah.
one
How?
thing?
I think probably the biggest thing is don't try to do it alone. Like
Mm,
honestly, don't try to do it alone. You need someone to help you. You need like, and even myself, like knowing what I know, I still rely on
mm,
other people to support me because it is so hard when you're in that bubble of reactivity and sensitivity and so much going on. It is so hard to see the forest from the trees. Like it's just so hard. And
mm,
so I don't treat myself a lot of the time. If there's something significant going on, I will ask for help. So I think don't do it alone because
mm.
getting a professional to help you can really help to just guide you in the right direction. And also, you need support. Like, it's really difficult to do alone. So yeah, definitely think, don't do it alone. Get the help of a professional and get people supporting you and being your cheerleaders in the background and telling you that these things are normal too. Because that was the biggest thing for me. Like, it's like, I just thought I was going mad throughout that whole
Yeah,
process. And so to have
yeah,
someone there to say, no, no, this is actually like, you know, this is actually okay. It's okay. What you're
mhm,
feeling, what's happening right now is okay. And this is how we're going to work through it. Was so important because I was actually being
mm,
validated rather than being dismissed, which was
yeah,
a big difference and a big game changer for me. So, yeah,
yeah.
that's one thing, honestly.
Perfect.
Got
No,
the
love
one.
it. Love it. You did it. No, I so agree. I so agree. So, thank you so much, hey, for sharing all of that. Like, it's just gone. Time's actually gone really quick. That was
Yeah.
really, really interesting. And I definitely want to say for anyone listening, in the show notes, you can find Rochelle's handle on Insta, so you can go and click on that to follow her. Um, but if you're interested in reaching out to Roshelle, please do. She'll, I'm sure, love it. I'm going to speak on your behalf. If anyone's
Yeah.
got any questions and slides into her DMs, go for it. Roshelle also does, you'll find her on the JCN website for bookings for sure, but she actually also runs our gut health testing package. So that's actually a package we've put together specifically for gut related issues. I mean, you can still come along to the clinic and have an initial and test the waters with Roshelle if you're like, oh, is this what I want to do? But if you're like, oh my God, this lady is speaking my language, the gut package is really awesome for actually
Mm.
getting in, working on your gut health, looking at functional testing, and just everything that Rochelle's talked about, having that really specific guidance throughout. So I'll link that in the show notes too for anyone that is interested in checking that out. But otherwise, unless there's anything that we've missed that you wanted to cover, I would just say thank you.
Yeah, no, I think we've covered everything. Thank you. It's been awesome.
Yeah, love it. Love it, love it, love it. Well, yeah, thank you everyone for listening. And we'll definitely have Rochelle on again, most likely talking all things gut, because that's what we love to talk about. I think we definitely need to have a gut brain connection
Mm,
conversation as
for sure.
well. I think that would be pretty amazing. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.